Today on Investigate TV Plus, a car part made of precious metals takes just minutes to steal and is worth fast cash to thieves. I'm Lee Zurich.
And I'm Tisha Powell. Catalytic converter thefts fuel crime rings, and most of the time, thieves face few consequences. Plus,
why do you think it's important to put this in place at the federal level?
It's such an interstate crime. We know this.
We go in depth with the senator who's pushing for tougher penalties in order to protect your car.
Then electric cars let you ditch the pump, but drivers are having a tough time finding a place to plug in.
All of a sudden the battery was like, just kidding, we can't make it anymore.
We explain EV charging deserts and what's being done to make sure every state has charging stations drivers can count on.
And the art of the steal.
Likely no one saw that painting for decades, the way it was hung.
We go inside the museum heist that took just minutes to pull off and tell you the twists and turns of the decades-long quest to bring it home.
In-depth stories that inform and inspire. You're watching Investigate TV Plus. It's a crime of opportunity running rampant in the United States.
A recent Carfax report found at least 153,000 catalytic converter thefts in 2022, but the number could be higher because many victims often don't file an insurance claim.
Reporter Heather Graff examines the rise in catalytic converter thefts and the steps lawmakers are taking to combat this crime.
Clocked out at 5 to go home, started the truck. It was really loud. I climbed under there and the catalytic converter was gone.
Muncie Cerullia's catalytic converter theft was caught on camera. Thieves in this white BMW SUV drove into his work parking lot in North Las Vegas, swiped the part, and were gone in a matter of minutes.
You'll hear it pull in, and then they'll come in and be like, oh, I started my car this morning again. It's really loud. I don't know why it's really loud.
Mechanic Connor Schmidt says vehicles missing a catalytic converter make a very distinctive, loud noise like this. Mandated in the U.S. since 1975, catalytic converters neutralize harmful gases in the engine's exhaust that contribute to air pollution. The precious metals used to clean those fumes, namely platinum, palladium, and rhodium, are what thieves want. And the National Insurance Crime Bureau says metal recyclers will pay between $50 to $250 for a converter and up to $800 for one removed from a hybrid vehicle. At the same time, experts say repairs can be tedious and costly for car owners, and insurance may not cover it.
Those catalytic converters can be anywhere from $500 to $2,000.
Now there's a bipartisan effort underway on Capitol Hill to try to combat catalytic converter thefts across the country. The Preventing Auto Recycling Thefts, or PART Act of 2023, was introduced by Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar.
So this is a incredibly, maybe bizarre, but concerning crime.
Senator Klobuchar, who's also a former prosecutor, says converter thefts are not a haphazard crime.
Many of these have been rings of people that steal it. They don't just steal one catalytic converter and see, oh, where can I sell this? No, these are crime rings.
One big issue for law enforcement is that catalytic converter thefts are hard to track. So, Klobuchar says the PART Act would require car makers to stamp a vehicle identification number on converters for new vehicles, making it easier to prove the part is stolen. It would also create a grant program through which car owners can get traceable VIN numbers stamped on existing vehicles. And finally, the legislation would make catalytic converter thefts a federal criminal offense, with harsher consequences for thieves.
Why do you think it's important to put this in place at the federal level?
It's such an interstate crime. We know this. But if there's never a consequence, and if there is one, it's just a slap, well, that's not going to work. So it's got to be something more major, and that's why upping the penalties to a federal crime is a good idea.
A companion bill to the PART Act is making its way through the U.S. House of Representatives. In the meantime, the National Insurance Crime Bureau says bills have been introduced in dozens of state legislatures and localities to combat catalytic converter theft, and several have already become law. For example, in North Las Vegas, it's illegal to possess a catalytic converter that was removed from a car, meaning recyclers who purchase stolen parts face criminal charges along with thieves.
More and more electric vehicles are hitting the road, but the critical charging stations they need to keep moving aren't available everywhere. The Biden administration is working to get more, pushing for 500,000 charging stations nationwide by 2030. But until they're all built, investigator Josie Sturman discovered drivers in many parts of the country may find themselves in a charging desert.
So see, here's where I was going. This is my parents.
Justin McCormick's trips to see family are a little bit longer since he moved from Arkansas to Austin, Texas. The electric vehicle he fell in love with was supposed to make getting back a little easier. But on a recent trip home, McCormick's car, which can usually find charging stations at the push of a button, couldn't track down any as his charge dwindled.
And so all of a sudden the battery was like, just kidding, we can't make it anymore.
He hit what's called a charging desert, an area with no public places for electric vehicles to plug in and recharge. Outside the East and West Coasts, they're fairly common. Our national investigative team analyzed charging station data from the Department of Energy, creating this heat map that shows chargers concentrated mostly in urban areas, with shortages plaguing much of Middle America.
That really creates like a lot of barriers that I think that people don't realize.
That national data analyzed by our team shows there are more than 53,000 public EV charging stations across the U.S. in places like convenience stores, parking garages, universities, even a zoo and a winery. But while California, New York, and Florida make the top 3 for most chargers, with thousands each, we also discovered there are 5 states with fewer than 100 stations total. Less than 15% of all public charging stations nationwide are DC fast, the quickest type that can charge 200 miles in a matter of minutes, while the vast majority of stations are level 2, where charging could take hours.
There is much more that needs to be done to strengthen the network.
It's work that's getting a boost from the federal infrastructure law that's channeling $5 billion over 5 years to a special program that'll help build out the country's EV charging network and eliminate some deserts. But with much of the focus on EVs so far centered on big cities and suburbs, Virginia Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger is fighting to make sure charger funding also makes its way to rural areas.
What do you think happens if rural communities are left behind when this money goes out?
It would be catastrophic. Those can be major drivers of tourism to rural and agricultural communities. We want to make sure that as someone's driving through, that they're not just having to hug the interstate because they think that that's where they're going to be able to find the charging station.
I think we have a real opportunity right now to make sure that rural communities aren't left behind. That's not a foregone conclusion.
But Emily Wurzbo with the Environmental Defense Fund says stakeholders have to get involved in the process now because every state in the country is getting a piece of the charging program's pot and has to submit plans outlining how they'll spend it year by year. Right now, the work is focused on building out so-called alternative fuel corridors along some of the nation's busiest highways, putting fast EV charging stations every 50 miles, no more than a mile off the interstate. After that, Wurzba says states have more wiggle room to decide where stations could go off the beaten path.
The conversation is really geared towards making it work for the local community.
Justin McCormick knows what can happen when a community isn't fully charged with the stations a growing number of EV drivers need.
And it just kept saying negative, however many miles, negative, negative, negative.
Despite his experience in a charging desert, he's still positive about electric vehicles and hopes the network gets a boost before his next trip home.
Rural, underserved areas are also getting another opportunity to fund EV charging stations in their area. In the spring of 2023, a $2.5 billion grant program specifically designed to serve those communities was unveiled.
The heist took just minutes, but the recovery took decades.
Walked into the bedroom and I reached down to pick up a piece of the dresser. And that's when I moved the door. So I was crouched down and I moved the door and I looked up.
Still to come, amateur detective work solves one of the most brazen thefts in the world of art.
But first, danger could be smoldering in your home. From the kitchen to the couch, we break down hidden fire hazards and the steps you can take to protect your family.
You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime online. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel at InvestigateTV. You can catch stories in full episodes. "2 minutes, according to the American Red Cross, that may be all the time you have to escape a home fire before it's too late. The National Safety Council says deaths from home fires in the United States have trended downward since the 1970s. But even one death from a preventable fire is too many.
We take a closer look at home fires and the tools to help keep your family safe. Dana Lambert may be retired from the fire department, but this former firefighter is still in the business of saving lives. Dana was driving back from the gym one morning when he noticed smoke pouring from a home in Phoenix.
Saw the smoke was just starting to come out. As a fireman, you can read the smoke. You know that was a really early fire.
Firefighters were working to rescue 2 young girls, ages 7 and 13, who were trapped inside the smoldering home and facing another danger.
There was a lot of propane and a lot of fire load that was there, tons of pallets, and so it was an intense fire super fast.
Dana knew he had to act quickly. He rushed inside the home and found the frightened girls and their puppy in a bedroom. Fortunately, everyone got out safely.
I just jumped out of my car, jumped over the fence, and just got there as quick as I could.
Those 2 girls were lucky thanks to Dana's actions, but unfortunately that's not always the case. The Federal Emergency Management Agency says home fires continue to be the 3rd leading cause of death for children ages 1 to 14. The most recent estimates from FEMA in 2021 found there were more than 353,000 building fires that resulted in more than 11,000 injuries and 2,800 deaths.
I call fire a living, breathing thing.
Lee Kish is a fire and safety educator for the Charlotte, North Carolina Fire Department. She says fire injuries and deaths can be reduced by teaching people the basic facts about fire, and it starts in the kitchen.
Cooking is now also the leading cause of all fire deaths in the United States.
When it comes to a cooking fire, Kish says don't use baking soda or salt if you see flames. Grab a lid and cover the pot. And don't use water.
Water can actually make the fire worse, almost creates an explosion.
If you get caught in a fire, the experts we spoke to say every second counts. According to Underwriters Laboratories, fire moves faster today than in years past due to open floor plans and lighter construction. Knox County, Tennessee fire safety specialist Colin Comesti says synthetic materials used in newer furniture also provides extra fuel.
Now couches are full of foam. They are basically a plastic synthetic material because it's plastic more than it is a natural fiber. It burns a lot faster once it's ignited, and it burns infinitely hotter than it would have its traditional counterparts some 15-20 years ago.
Ready for lunch? Coming up, a museum packed with childhood nostalgia takes you back to the days of snack packs, pudding cups, and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But first, one man's small town purchase turned out to be priceless.
When I found the article online, as soon as I pulled that picture up, my heart just like stopped, because I instantly knew, I just knew. It had me terrified, you know, the whole time we had it. But yeah, there was something about this painting.
We go inside a brazen art heist that remained unsolved for nearly 4 decades, and the keen eye that finally cracked this case.
It's a heist that stunned the art world and baffled law enforcement for decades. It's centered around the theft of an iconic oil painting called Woman Ochre. The day after Thanksgiving, 1985, the painting was slashed from its frame and stolen from the walls of the University of Arizona Museum of Art. The painting, worth millions of dollars, was missing until 2017, when it was discovered during an estate sale in New Mexico.
But that's not the end of the story of Woman Ochre, the man who spotted this masterpiece set in motion the chain of events that led to its recovery. Brooke Wagner takes us inside the heist and restoration of this prized painting.
Every time I go by the art museum, I think of that particular day and what an impact that it had on the campus and really the art world.
The subject of one of Tucson's most enduring mysteries, Woman Ochre, an abstract work by Willem de Kooning, famous for being missing.
I always held on to that hope that the painting would be returned.
It's finally back home at the University of Arizona Museum of Art, where it was slashed from its frame in 1985.
Likely no one saw that painting for, decades, the way it was hung.
Walked into the bedroom and I reached down to pick up a piece of the dresser, and that's when I moved the door. So I was crouched down and I moved the door and I looked up.
A few years ago, a New Mexico antiques dealer discovered it in the estate of a woman who, along with her husband, is suspected in the heist. But they died before anyone knew they had the piece.
When I found the article online, as soon as I pulled that picture up, my heart just stopped, because I instantly knew. I just knew. It had me terrified, the whole time we had it. But yeah, there was something about this painting.
He was so clear. You could tell he really believed he had the painting. He gave us all of the information we needed.
He started to provide more and more details of the photographs of the painting, the fact that it wasn't a poster, it was actually a painting, and measuring it up and figuring out that it matched exactly was pretty phenomenal. It was unbelievable.
After years of restoration at the Getty Center, Woman Ochre returned to UA under cover of night with a police escort, the pampered sole occupant of a semi-trailer. Museum Registrar Kristen Schmidt was there for the uncrating.
The highlight of my career is the return of this painting, and so to have it as part of my body made sense.
Schmidt asked her tattoo artist to interpret Woman Ochre on her arm. Just one lasting impression of this mystery solved. A crown jewel returned may sound like the end of this thriller, but for a new generation, the curious and art lovers around the world, it's just the beginning.
I just can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here.
To have it back is, there are no words.
Woman Ochre's Full Circle Saga is bringing together art and mystery lovers old and new, recruiting fans with its cinematic arc of redemption.
The way it's restored a lot of people's faith in generosity of strangers.
So it's not just painting on a canvas, it's an incredible story.
The motive in this case is still not clear. The FBI considers the case closed, but says it could be reopened if new information comes to light.
And this crime is very unusual in nature. According to the museum's website, most art thefts are committed internally, and art is most often stolen from storage areas rather than exhibitions. But can you believe after 30 years the painting just reappeared?
It's like something that could be in a movie, really?
Yeah.
Like what, the Thomas Crown Affair, I think, was a movie about stolen art. It could be in a revised version of that movie, maybe.
Always pay attention when you go to those garage sales, because you never know
what you may find.
Yeah. Well, up next, inspired to think outside the box.
I went to Barnes & Noble's, looked at price guides, and I saw just how many different lunchboxes were made. And then that kind of set me on my quest.
We'll take you to a museum that celebrates the golden age of Saturday morning cartoons and family-friendly primetime.
You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime streaming online. Get the app for Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. They're free to download. A display of more than 500 lunchboxes that debuted at the Durham Museum in Omaha not only triggers feelings of nostalgia, but also provides insight into the school cafeteria staples' evolution in art, pop culture, and production.
Mark Keelahan is the man who collected and researched all of these legacies of lunch.
I've been collecting lunchboxes for about 30 years now. So I started by picking up a single Pac-Man lunchbox at a flea market here in Omaha when I was attending Creighton University. I grew up most of my life over in Germany on a military base. My dad was in the Army. And so when I saw that, it reminded me of my childhood, playing games and so forth, Atari. But then it got me on this path of saying, what else is out there? I just thought it was such a unique item. And then I went to Barnes & Noble's, looked at price guides, and I saw just how many different lunchboxes were made. And then that kind of set me on my quest to go out and buy more. And so I started hunting around at flea markets, garage sales, antique malls. This was all before eBay, and buying up what I could. When eBay came around, it became very easy to buy pretty much anything. And so the thrill of the hunt for lunchboxes was gone. But I started to evolve a little bit in my collecting tastes and found things like original artwork that was used to make the lunchbox, original production material. And then from there, I started doing more research just to understand stories and the history of lunchboxes. And when I pieced all that together, I said, what am I going to do with this? And I thought a museum exhibit was really the right way to tell this story. What's differentiating here is there's never been an exhibit done that explores the history, the insights and production process of lunchboxes. It tells a lot about the history of manufacturing even in the United States.
The exhibit was wrapped up in Omaha, but it will be hitting the road.
Yeah, get this, Mark's passion is also extended into giving back. Recently, he collaborated with the Thermos Company, which donated 100 lunchboxes to Youth Emergency Services in Omaha. Did you have a lunchbox?
I did.
What was it?
Saw my lunchbox.
Which one?
It was the Care Bears one with
Care
the
Bears?
rainbow.
Ah, nice. I had the Pac-Man. I did.
Yeah.
I would cycle through them. Pac-Man was one of my favorites.
What a nice little walk down
I like
memory
that.
lane.
Very nice, I know. All right, that's it for us on Investigate TV Plus. I'm Lee Zurich.
And I'm Tisha Powell. Thanks for watching.
On the next Investigate TV Plus,
the top of the car was ripped right on the welds like a can opener.
Guardrails meant to protect you during a crash could be deadly. We examine the dangers and go in depth with the experts calling for more oversight.